across the country from the 70s to 2005.
Hi everyone, welcome to my channel and thank you for joining me for another documentary. As you can see, we're going to talk about a true monster today. So buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride and it's probably going to be lengthy, and I apologize in advance. Before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's tuning in, who's watching me. I appreciate it. I need somebody to listen to me. Please forgive me for some of the mispronunciations I probably say throughout the video. And also, I'm a nervous person. I am an introvert, so my mannerisms are a little strange, and I know it. I just hope that I can get my story across to you guys the best I can. I want to start off with trigger warning. This is not for kids. It's 93 women were murdered, so definitely trigger warnings. There's so much to this story I wish I could get into. I've scoured the internet and thousands of documents and things I've read. But let's be real, you don't want to see 3 hours long worth of me talking. I'd put you to sleep, you'd be bored. But anyways, let's get to the story and I hope you enjoy it. Candace again, Coffee and Crime. Today I'm drinking something else, so it's early, but I did not feel like going to make me no coffee. So just one of those days. It feels like a Monday, but it's a Thursday. Hope everyone's Thursday's going good today. I've been teasing that I'm working on a new documentary on Samuel Little. I've been doing as much research as possible, trying to make it interesting, because a lot of the times I've been looking up things about him, all I'm hearing about is the same things. So I'm hopefully doing this, I can at least give a few details that aren't very commonly known. And it's shocking that he's not as well known as, like most killers, like the Monster series, Jeffrey Dahmer, Ed Gein, all them people. And this man's committed 93 murders. 93. And that's not including all his other crimes and attempted rape, attempted this, attempted... there's a couple of survivors too, so that would have put him probably in 100 had he not, had the women not survived, closer to 100. But it's Samuel Little. He was born in Reynolds, Georgia, on June 7th, 1940. He was dubbed the choke and stroke killer due to the fact that he liked to pleasure himself while strangling his victims. Yeah. He had many aliases, but he was actually born Samuel McDowell, his father's last name. I guess maybe after all the criminal charges and everything else, he decided to take his mother's name, maiden name, Little, after that. And his life of crime started in the 70s, later 70s. But before we get into all that, I'm going to go ahead and tell you about his childhood and what led up to his 93 victims. Gonna let you in on the mind of a psychopath. Samuel was raised in an abusive household. His father drank, his mother was a prostitute, and I'm thinking a drug addict. As a matter of fact, when he was born, his mother was actually incarcerated at the time, from what I've read, and that was the start of his life. He started off in that. I don't know at what age it was, but at some time or another, his mother actually abandoned him, and it was just the father and the rest of his siblings. From an interview, he had a lot of siblings. So it's just like I said, it was a rough start right off the bat. So a large family, abandonment issues, obviously dirty, not clean. Probably living in his car more than living at home. That was his early years. Eventually, he ended up moving in with his grandparents and moved to Lorain, Ohio. That's a good ways from Georgia. And from what he had said was his grandmother primarily took care of him. So, and she was a good woman. So his crimes and everything, it was no reflection on her. For some reason, it seems like some people are just born to be bad. In his case, he was pretty bad. During an interview, Little told that he had violent tendencies since an early age. He tells about it. He noticed his teacher touching her neck, and he really liked it. So, at an early age, he started having sexual fantasies, like early on, like way too young. Had sexual fantasies about strangling women. It was his kink, you know. And as a teen, he started collecting true crime magazines, primarily the ones that depicted strangulation of women. And he had strong stature about him and really large hands from what everyone described him. So that made, I guess, perfect for the strangling, you know, the brute force it takes to strangle somebody, and the big hands, you know, holding them down, that helps. But anyways, anyway, in 1956, he was sent to juvie for breaking and entering, eventually leading him to move in with his estranged mother. I guess they reconnected when he got older. She had moved to Florida, and he found her. So he began doing all sorts of jobs, like cemetery work, ambulance attendant, and he was traveling for work, or I guess he was just traveling to travel, probably to get into mischief, seems like. But during his traveling, he started having a lot of run-ins with police officers. He was arrested in 8 states for crimes that included a DUI, fraud, shoplifting, solicitation, armed robbery, aggravated assault, and I guess I'm not supposed to say the hard R. Almost all of these were felony charges, and he barely served any time, like a slap on the wrist, you know. I think from what I read, the most was 3-year stint, and during those times that he served his sentences, he picked up boxing. He started learning to box, and he called himself a prize fighter. You know, he was obviously that good. From what everyone said, he was good, but and he never spent he never spent that much time in jail. And I guess, you know, when you're a criminal, if you're going to get in trouble and not really get punished, you're just going to keep on doing more and more and more. So, you know, especially when it's already in your blood to be bad like that, you know. But the 3-year sentence I was talking about was actually a breaking and entering charge in Lorain, Ohio. He broke into a furniture store. He was released in 1964. So by 75, though, he had been arrested 26 times in 11 states. And these other charges, these newer ones, were theft, assault, attempted rape, fraud, and attacks on the government officials. At one point, a judge in Missouri thought 3 months was an appropriate amount of time for rape and assault. Yep. Judge in Missouri, 3 months. And he was let out after all the charges, all the times he's been arrested. They didn't think that he was going to be a menace to society, I guess. But the FBI dubbed him the most prolific serial killer in the U.S. history. But I believe, and experts do as well, that had he not targeted I don't know, I guess you call it the demographic that he targeted, like poor, prostitutes, drug addicts, I think homeless people, just helpless people. I think that he would have been caught a lot sooner. But, you know, that's just my opinion. And like I said, experts' opinion. He was confirmed to have 50 definite kills, but he confessed to 93. Little doesn't get much recognition, mainly because, you know, like I said, the fact that they had problems, they wouldn't be missed. People didn't look for them, wouldn't notice if they disappeared, you know. And unfortunately, it was true in all these cases. Like for decades, no one seemed to care. No one seemed bothered by it. That bothers me, and I didn't even know him. So, anyways, the thing that I think is the most craziest part is he left DNA everywhere. Despite forensics really wasn't a thing back then, but it's still very careless, you know. And he used the same MO. He left his victims with their shirts pulled over their head and no bottoms. And he left them in like wooded areas, you know, similar areas. And no one caught on. I know it's all different states, 14 states, but nothing registered to these people. It's just, these are crimes that should have been caught way early on. But like I said, people didn't pay much attention to prostitutes and druggies. The cases were mostly open and shut, like labeled as accidents, drug overdoses, or just bodies were just not found, or they were like runaways, considered runaways, you know. After 50 years, Little's first victim was finally identified. For 46 years, she went by, they called her Macon Jane Doe, because she was murdered in Macon. She was from Macon. Her name was Yvonne Pless. She was 20 years old and was murdered in 1977. And Little was 30 years old at the time himself. And in 1982, in Macon, another woman, a young woman named, I think, Fredoria Smith, she had been murdered as well. But like I said, 50 years it took to identify and uncover his first victim. Here's a picture that Little had painted of Yvonne Pless and what the cops had generated when they reopened the cold case. Due to her being decomposed so badly, that's how they had to come up with that to find the family member. So let's get into the victims. Of course, I can't get into all 93, but there's some, the FBI crime lab in Quantico started compiling up evidence in 2012 linking DNA to certain cases. The certain cases all ended up being revolved around Little. One of the first ones was Audrey Nelson. She was thrown away in a dumpster, just like discarded. Then there's Guadalupe Apodaca. Please forgive me if I said her name wrong. She was found in a vacant garage. Like shirts over the head, pants, underwear gone, drag marks all over their bodies, bruised necks, crushed hyoid bones, from strangulation, and both of them had Little's DNA. Next was Denise Brothers, Odessa, Texas, left outside by a fence. And like I said, all these are cold cases. These women went missing since the 70s, and this is in 2012. But there was 2 survivors. They talked about what his methods were, what he did. He liked torturing them. He liked bringing them to near death and letting go. And somehow or another, I guess he made a mistake with those 2, and they got away. They did. I'll read on it. I don't know how they got away, but they did. San Diego, 2013. There was attempted murders in the 80s. Was Lori Burrows, raped and constantly strangled, left in an empty parking lot. A month later, in a dark field, the cops caught Little parked in the dark, put the lights on, and he slowly gets out, zipping up his pants. He's nervous. Lies to the cops. Him and his wife got in this argument, and they drove around and then made up and started making love in the middle of the field. But the cops didn't believe him. Well, they cuffed him and then noticed in the back seat a nude female bleeding from her nose and mouth, nearly dead. Her name was Tanya Jackson. They revive her, an ambulance shows up, and he's taken to the hospital for a rape exam. He jokingly says, you're not going to find anything on the rape kit, but you can check my hands. Basically strangled. He thought it was funny. And he said, straight up, he's no rapist. Like, that was an insult to him. If you even if you thought you were accusing him of it, he's no rapist. He'd rather be a strangler and a murderer. But, got cold. He said, even he admitted to strangling her because she was a prostitute, and I guess he was trying to play it off like he paid her for rough play or whatever, but he was heard saying, I should have killed that whore. That's what he said. And he said she deserved everything she got. He was pissed at the cops. Lori Burrows lied, though. She never told the authorities that she was a hooker, a prostitute, and she wasn't kidnapped or raped. She was strangled and bleeding, nearly murdered. So when it came time to trial, they were caught off guard. It made the case look really bad, and the problem with Tanya and Lori both were the key to this case, and the problem with Tanya was that she came into court drunk, saying she was nervous and she needed a drink. So the case was affected by both the situations, the lies and the fact that there's a drunk on stand. And then Little had a girlfriend, and she was the alibi. Said he was with her the whole time. They never left each other. They never leave each other's side. He could never harm a fly. Never did anything wrong. He was called to the stand, and he was covered in scratches. From fighting back. Strangle somebody. They're gonna. So and it's obvious. Everyone could tell that he had defensive wounds. What do you call it? Defensive wounds. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, but his main thing is he felt cheated about his $20. So he attacked Tanya. I don't know. And somehow or another, the jury went in the back after 30 minutes, came back, hung jury. Case thrown out. No, the case wasn't thrown out. I'm sorry. Somehow or another, it was a hung jury. But I guess with all the evidence, they were going to retry him. So with him thinking he was going to get a lot of years, they decided to make a plea bargain with him for 4 years. He ended up walking at 34 months, which was almost his full-term sentence. But anyways, so just 5 months after he's released from prison in LA in 1987, women just start showing up strangled to death. So in 2012, DNA breaks the case. DNA linked to 3 victims. Carol Alford, murdered July 87. She was the one that was murdered 5 months after his release. There was DNA evidence on her shirt that matched Little's. And just like Audrey and Guadalupe, they were all found in close proximity of his apartment in which he lived with his girlfriend. By the way, the girlfriend that he had been long-term girlfriend that he had met in prison. So, anyways, and she was pretty rough. She helped him with a lot of crimes, but claims to not knowing about the murders. Whole nother story. There's so much to this story, but I'm not trying to make a 3-hour-long video. But after that, after they found out all this, the DA was seeking the death penalty, which, should. That's 3 deaths out of God knows. But after trial takes place and everything else, you don't get the death penalty. But at 74 years old, he's found guilty of all charges of murder on September 22nd, 2014, and is ordered to serve 3 consecutive life-term prison sentences. Crazy thing is, he maintained his innocence and made appeal after appeal after appeal, and kept saying he was getting off this. This is, you can see his court cases and see how he's confident that he's gonna be released. But as I've said several times in the video, Little's MO is what helped him not get caught, along with his choice of the victims. So, he also knew if he killed him, nobody would care. I've said this already. Crack and cocaine was on the rise, and he knew that the legal system, well, and he's been in trouble since he was 13 years old. So, he didn't use weapons. He used different aliases, traveled with his alibi. The lady, his girlfriend that he met in prison, Orielle Dorsey was her name, by the way. And he basically picked people with no ties, and he knew what he was doing. He had a murder and wanted a murder, and he knew exactly who to target. So, 1982, murders started piling up again, horrifying the police across several states. Some of the murders were Patricia Mount and Melinda LaPree. Mindy was her nickname. She was only 22. They were murdered in 1982 in Pensacola, Missouri, or Melinda got in a car one day and was never seen. A rebellious, smart girl, ambitious. A guy named Bill got her into drugs and prostitution. October 4th, she was found in a cemetery, badly decomposed. The cemetery worker went into the grounds to do his thing and smelled this horrible smell, you know. She'd been there for days. And anyway, sometime or another, I think a couple days later, witnesses accounted for the vehicle that, you know, she got into and described him to a little bit. And he was found shoplifting not too far from the cemetery and not too long after, same vehicle. So that's what got him caught. And this leads to Gainesville, Florida woman, Patricia Mount, the one I said her name earlier. She was found dead in a hayfield. She was covered in human feces, bruised and scratched up. Witnesses said that the night before she went missing, she had drank a lot, and they had seen her getting into Little's vehicle, and while extremely intoxicated. And so on December 1st in Mississippi, he was caught. Trial came in 1983, and they had found hair on her body that was Little's, and it linked them. But somehow or another, he was found not guilty. He just kept getting away with everything, with all his crimes. And I don't know. He did the unimaginable to these women. He tortured them. He gave them hope one minute and then gave them despair the next. He deserved a death penalty, and he deserved to die horribly, a horrible, horrible way. But instead, he died in prison at age 80 from heart problems. The only thing good that came out of his incarceration was when he finally admitted to actually murdering the women he did, and he came clean. 50 of the people he had claimed to kill, it was proven that he had he did it. But he drew pictures. He had a photographic memory, and he could draw. And he drew, like, I don't know how many pictures. I've seen a minute ago. It was a lot. And I'm about to show you a few of the ones I found online. He was pretty good at it. The pictures of the women and next to the drawings is it's pretty good. It's like a police sketch artist in a way. It's just really sad to see all those faces, knowing what they went through. There's a lot more if you want to get online and look it up and see. And a lot of them have the actual victims side by side, so makes it a little more sadder there too.
Convicted serial killer Samuel Little pleaded guilty to 2 more murders on Friday. Little has now confessed to 92 murders total, all of them happening throughout the United States and one right here in Odessa. Little appeared via Skype for the plea and sentencing in Ohio, and he received 15 years to life for each count. Little is already in prison in California, where he is serving multiple life sentences. The 80-year-old admitted to 2 separate murders in Cincinnati, including the 1981 strangulation of a woman.
One good thing is the FBI is still tracking down victims through those drawings. Even if it is sad, there's a silver lining anyways at the end. They're still finding people and giving victims' families closure, if there even is any closure for that kind of thing. And what I want to talk about next before I end the video is probably going to be repeating some of the same stuff I already talked about, because I found this article last minute after I'd already recorded everything, and it's like, you know what, it's still, it was important to me. It is. So I want to talk about the impact it had on the survivors that were treated like crap when they tried to testify. Earlier I made a mistake, so there was only 2 survivors. There was actually 4. So I think I corrected myself in that, though. But you'll see. This article I found, I had to share with you. This story isn't really about Samuel Little himself. I'd like to put a spotlight on the survivors. Strong women that survived his attacks. And this article that I'm about to read, or summarize for you guys, is, and I'm going to be looking a lot towards this way, and so I'm sorry. I'm working on getting the money up for a proper camera and computer, but until then I'm making do with what I got. This is accounts of the 4 survivors that I've spoke about in the video. Actually, I messed up somewhere. I am gonna have to look back. I think I had said there was only 2, so I messed up with that part. But either way, there was 4 survivors, 4 out of 93. And some say 93, some say 94. But anyway, either way, like I said, that would have been 97 or 98 victims had he succeeded. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with this part here. This is highlighting more on the judicial system screwing up too. I've said that several times, throughout. But years before it was known he was a serial killer, several Samuel Little's surviving victims testified against him in hopes of him getting off the streets. Some knew that the cards were stacked against them because of attitudes about their drug dependence or involvement in the sex work. Yet they still tried to protect other women. In all their original cases, they were deemed non-credible, allowing the murderer to continue roaming America for killing for years, just because they were judged. Had people listened to all 4 of these women, there could have been a lot more happy families right now. Samuel Little was 78 years old and serving a prison sentence in Texas when he began a series of conversations hinting at his involvement in a host of unsolved murders. Eventually, he claimed that between 1978 and 2005, he killed 93 people as he drifted across the country. As I've said a million times. The FBI called him the most, we already know, most prolific serial killer in the U.S. history. And before his death, he was credibly connected to 50 of those murders. Like, it was 100% yes. They knew that it was him. DNA evidence, all evidence pointed at him being the murderer. So how did he escape detection for so long? That's the question. And we already discussed this. And by his own admission, it was the people he chose. It was his victims that he picked. In the early 80s, Hilda Nielsen and Leila McLean were black sex workers living in Pascagoula, Mississippi. I hope I said that right. Oh God, Mississippi, when they were separately attacked and raped by Little. The man who hated being called a rapist and swore he would never rape a woman. Yeah, I guess he considered prostitutes free game, and it wasn't considered rape in his eyes. So, but they walked miles to the courthouse to testify against their attacker. But when Nelson, who was 8 months pregnant, took the witness stand and saw Little, she was so terrified she literally wet herself. And she was released from her subpoena. McLean walked Nelson home without testifying. When they told Hilda to go, this is what she said. When they told Hilda to go, I left with her because I felt like they weren't going to do anything anyways. So, according to court documents, she said that's what she told them. There was also we spoke about Lori Barros, who survived an attack in San Diego in '84 when she was only 22 years old. She explained in the docuseries that she felt like Little could sense that she didn't care about herself. Still, she was able to describe Little and his car to the police. And basically, her remembering things and her descriptions and all that helped get him caught in the act of strangling another local woman, Tanya Johnson, in his car. And we spoke about that. I have pictures of her. As the docuseries shows, there was worry from the prosecution that the pair wouldn't be credible because of their jobs and their drug use, even though police witnessed Jackson being attacked. Even though they seen it. I mean, what? I don't even know. Still, they testified against him. And like we discussed, it resulted in a hung jury. The state neglected to pursue a second trial, and Little pleaded guilty to a lesser charge in exchange for a 4-year sentence, of which he served only 2. He got caught in the act of strangling a woman, left one woman for dead, and got 2 years. 2 years. Sam had a unique ability for finding the people who would not be credible regardless of what they'd say, even if they lived, who would believe them. And he was right. Somehow he was more credible in the court's eyes than these witnesses were. Even so, decades later, survivors, including Barros, returned to ensure that he was convicted in 2012 of the murders of 3 women in California between '87 and '89. He was only convicted of 3 murders. I mean, he still got 3 life sentences, but 3? And these survivors, it had to take some oomph to, get these women to summon the courage to go back decades later and bring it all up again in a trial. Everyone was blown away by the strength and upset that they were initially disregarded and mistreated. They were victims, They weren't treated like victims. They were treated like offenders, And it's shameful 3 days later, 3 years, 3 decades later. It's great to finally hold him accountable, but the trial the trail of death was inexcusable. What I've been saying this whole time, this all could have been prevented, but no. I guess life happens, death happens. I don't know exactly. It's ridiculous, just ridiculous. Each of them women went in the courtroom and collapsed to the floor. So it can't be overstated how much they went through, how much they gave to make sure that this didn't happen again, if they could help it. That's what they wanted, you know. They literally put aside their PTSD, their trauma, their anxiety, all issues, just to save other women. I mean, God knows how many more he would have possibly, you know, killed. I don't know. But Lauren felt she had to keep pushing to give victims back their dignity. The author told the website Oxygen.com that so many of the victims were close to her heart. Like Marion, a black trans teen girl in Miami, Florida, murdered by Little in either 71 or 72. According to the FBI, her body was never found. So, he described how she fought and ran. Lauren recalled, and her heel caught the pavement, and that's when he got her and knocked her over and dragged her to the back of his car. There's something about her that became so clear in my mind. That's what he said about the victim, Marion. Lauren hopes that the viewers take away that every victim is worthy of dignity, and that denying them that creates the conditions that made it possible for Little to keep killing for so long in the first place. People should have an awareness that when we don't treat every victim with equality, whether it's a college student at a prestigious university or someone who makes a living in the sex trade industry, all victims should be treated equally, because that's the foundation of our society is about, what our criminal justice system should be about. And when you don't treat victims equally, you create monsters like Sam Little. He could have so easily been apprehended decades earlier and saved so much pain. And there's so much more to the story. There's a lot of victims I could talk about, but I think you get the gist of what kind of a monster he was. I wouldn't even call him a monster. I would call him a demon. And 80 years old, living that long, and taking these women at such a young age, it's just a travesty. He should have never lived that long. He should have never had a life. He got to do what he wanted to do while people were thrown away like garbage. So this is just, he should have been put out of his misery a long time ago. The justice system failed in this case. He should have never got out of jail. There was too many signs, too much he had done wrong. There was no reason for someone like him to even been roaming free like he was, but he did. There's a lot of people still missing, and I'm hoping, and the FBI is hoping, that eventually these families will get their closure. But unfortunately, him being gone and passing, there's really nothing they can do. My prayers go out to these families, and this man people should know about this man. The funny thing is he reminded me a bit of Ted Bundy from what they said, how he approached his victims. It wasn't like, hey, you're a prostitute, get in my car and I'll pay you. He actually did what Ted Bundy did a lot of times, act like a good Samaritan, try to be helpful, very sweet, and then as soon as they got in the car with him, he turned into the devil. So be wary, be careful of people that seem sweet, because you can't trust anybody. Y'all be safe out there, and come back and check my channel out. I hope you subscribed. Hope you liked it, and if there's anything you want to see, let me know. Like I keep saying, any suggestions I appreciate. Next documentary I plan to do is Israel Keys. Yeah, he baffles me, and I'm really gonna love doing a deep dive on him. So stay tuned, and thank you for coming to my channel.